Hello, howdy. Today we're going to be talking about the most common win condition in cEDH. And no, it's actually not Thassa's Oracle. That is the most optimal win condition in cEDH, and is the one that we went over in the first episode. If you haven't seen that, be sure to check that out. Today we'll be talking about the most common win condition, and that is due to its versatility in many different situations to either get you value, replay your current win condition, or be a win condition all in its own. That card, of course, is Underworld Breach. Underworld Breach is a 2 mana enchantment, 1 in a red pip, which says each non-land card in your graveyard has escape, and the escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice this enchantment. Spoilers, you'll probably win before that end step happens. Now, to talk about how this is a win condition all on its own, we can talk about the pairing that we most commonly see with Underworld Breach, and that is Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze is a 1 in blue instant that says target player mills 3 cards and has Storm on it. That target player oftentimes will be yourself until you get to the position we can then just mill out all of your opponent's libraries and watch them lose on the draw phase. This is a fantastic pairing with Underworld Breach because of the escape cost requiring you to exile 3 cards every single time you cast something from your graveyard. You're going to run out of cards in your graveyard pretty quickly, so this filling your graveyard with the entire library not only allows you to continue casting spells as much as you need to, but also you might be able to find what you need to win. So as you mill 3 cards at a time, Brain Freeze was cast, you can just go ahead and exile those 3 cards, cast Brain Freeze again. Oh, Storm count plus the Underworld Breach, you actually probably should have milled 3 cards extra that last turn, and now you can mill 9 cards. As that resolves, you'll have so many cards in your graveyard just from the second cast of the spell to be able to exile whatever you don't need, mostly lands typically, at least first, and then just keep recasting Brain Freeze. Eventually, you'll get to the win condition that you want, such as Thassa's Oracle itself, and would you look at that, because we milled our entire library, we also have access to our Demonic Consultation now as well. Wow! Now, this is not a 2-card win condition, and you might be noticing why already, and that is because you are lacking the mana to be able to recast Brain Freeze. Eventually, we're going to run out of mana, and in cEDH, we'll be doing this before turn 5, and we're going to have to find some mana somehow. The most efficient way of doing that, of course, would be Lion's Eye Diamond. Lion's Eye Diamond is a 0-cost artifact that says you can discard your hand and sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond. If you do that, then you'll be able to add 3 mana of any color of your choice. Yep. So if you do that and discard your whole hand, that means you can add the 3 blue mana, 2 of which you need to recast Brain Freeze. You can see how this is a pretty simple win condition with these 3 cards. Be able to mill your entire deck, always have the mana you need to be able to recast Brain Freeze, and by the time you've cast this enough times, you'll have enough cards from your library and your graveyard. You can recast Brain Freeze enough times to mill out all 3 of your opponents, and you can either watch them just die on their draw step like I said before, or you could just use Fairy Mastermind or some other way of forcing those players are drawing the cards. Of course, if you did this, you want to make sure you didn't mill your entire library first, forcing yourself to lose with everybody else, ending in a draw. Because that's a little tricky to do, and not all decks are geared to have their own endurance or something of the sort to reset their own library before forcing every player to draw a card. The win condition we usually see from Underworld Breach is typically just milling out everybody's library and then using something like Mnemonic Betrayal or your own Thassa's Oracle win condition, or find some other form of win condition in your graveyard, because you have access to your entire library at this point and enough mana, you should, to be able to win however else your deck wants to win. The versatility of Underworld Breach is even further seen because it's the answer to so many different problems. You just tried casting Thassa's Oracle win condition, that got countered? Breach. You want to cast your Thassa's Oracle win condition, but both cards are still in your library and you only have 1 tutor in hand? Breach. You have your Thassa's Oracle win condition in hand, but you actually only have access to 2 mana, one of which is red, and you have Lion's Eye Diamond on the field? Yep, you guessed it. Breach. There's a lot of really cool tricks to go with the Underworld Breach as well, one of which is the fact that Valley Floodcaller allows you to cast the Underworld Breach win condition with Lion's Eye Diamond and Brain Freeze all being non-creature spells you can do over the top of someone else's stack wars or whatever it may be, and you use Underworld Breach to access your own counter spells in your discard. In pretty much every case, as long as Underworld Breach actually resolves, typically people end up going for the win. Even if you don't have Lion's Eye Diamond, either got exiled or you haven't gotten to it in your library yet, you can back it up with something like Lotus Petal. Lotus Petal only cracks for 1 mana, but because of the fact that Brain Freeze is only 2 mana to cast, you generally will be able to create a storm count high enough to fill your graveyard enough to use the Lotus Petal to create enough mana out of the escaped cost requirements to be able to Brain Freeze yourself enough times until you eventually find your Lion's Eye Diamond, or you can create enough mana to be able to win the game. Another really neat trick with a fetch land in Underworld Breach is you can go ahead and crack it, fetch for a Surveil land perhaps. Not only does that fill your graveyard with another card to be able to pay the escape escape costs for things that you want to cast, but also you can fetch for a surveil land such as Undercity Sewers. It'll come in tapped, but who cares about the mana? We can do Lion's Eye Diamond shenanigans, things like that. And then in response to the surveil trigger, hold priority, use a top deck tutor, and then on the top of that library, you can then put something like, I don't know, a Lion's Eye Diamond to the top, or maybe a Brain Freeze. Once that resolves, it fills the graveyard with another card for the escape cost of whatever you're about to cast, and then the surveil trigger resolves, allowing you to put that Brain Freeze or Lion's Eye Diamond from the top of your library into your graveyard. That basically turns a tutor to hand option where Underworld Breach can access your graveyard as if it's your hand at this point. Of course, there's some things you need to look out for if you're going for the Underworld Breach line, especially if you're not under a silence effect, because before you get to the point where you have plenty of mana to recast all your spells, someone might use something like Chain of Vapor to bounce your Underworld Breach to hand when your Brain Freeze and your Lion's Eye Diamond are already cracked in your graveyard. Now your hand is entirely just an Underworld Breach, and you didn't add the red mana you need yet because you cracked Lion's Eye Diamond for blue to recast the Brain Freeze. So a key interaction point is in response to the Lion's Eye Diamond crack for blue mana, and then you cast the Brain Freeze that your opponents can respond to, someone might just Chain of Vapor that Underworld Breach up. Now you have just one blue mana and an entire library going into your graveyard. If not entire library, at least a lot that you might care about. The one card in hand that you have for next turn at that point would be this Underworld Breach, but you have no mana to cast it this turn. Now you're gonna have to sit around with one card in hand hoping you survive until the next. Spoiler alert, in cEDH, that's unlikely. Another big interaction point is after you have the Underworld Breach out and you do the Lion's Eye Diamond crack, you can just discard your entire hand. Your Brain Freeze is in your graveyard as well. You go to cast your Brain Freeze, and then someone just responds by silencing you. If your graveyard doesn't have any counter spells in it to stop the silence, you're pretty much doomed to having a lot of your library go into your graveyard as Brain Freeze resolves. Silence, of course, resolved at that point. Underworld Breach at the end step would then be sacrificed, put into your graveyard, and then you're left wishing you didn't actually crack that Lion's Eye Diamond. And while not really commonly played these days at the current state of cEDH in February of 2026, one of the many adversaries to the Underworld Breach win condition would be something like Dauthi Voidwalker. This critter absolutely just says you're not allowed to do your breach stuff at all. If you do, you're just giving the other person a win. Now say you actually don't have blue in your deck identity, you have just the red, maybe a white. What you want to go with would be a Wheel of Fortune as the alternative. Now this is by far not as good as Brain Freeze because it keeps refilling your opponent's hands every time you try doing the Wheel of Fortune line. That keeps giving them interaction points that they might be able to stop your win line, so it's very, very risky. But basically always, if you're going to be going for Underworld Breach loop line like this, you're going to usually be in white, and if that's the case, then you'll have something like a Grand Abolisher out in the field to really protect your win at this point. From here, it really doesn't matter if they keep getting new cards, because Grand Abolisher basically says they don't get to do anything about it. In this line with Wheel of Fortune and Lion's Eye Diamond to pair with Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond cracks, makes 3 red mana, you cast the Wheel of Fortune, that fills your graveyard with 7 cards probably, as you keep doing this loop. You use 3 of those 7 to recast Lion's Eye Diamond, and then the other 3 of those 7 to recast Wheel of Fortune. You'll net 1 more card in your graveyard than before you did that loop. Eventually, you'll go through your entire library, netting a positive 1 each loop to get enough cards to be able to cast your win condition at the very end when you have enough cards to really bolster up that attempt. Another alternative, if you don't have a protected line because you don't actually have that Grand Abolisher or other silence effect in play, you don't feel good about using a Wheel of Fortune line, or you just don't have the Wheel of Fortune on you, you can do something like Grinding Station. With Grinding Station, you don't actually net +1 every time you do a loop, but you could pair it with something like Lion's Eye Diamond or Lotus Petal. Both cost 0 mana to recast, and you'll just fill your graveyard with 3 cards every time that then you exile whatever you don't care about to be able to recast this 0 cost artifact. You won't gain any mana doing this, but at least you can get your entire library into your graveyard until you find your win, and then do what you want to do to win the game. Something else you can pair this with would be Mox Opal. Mox Opal actually goes online if you have Grinding Station, Mox Opal, and at least 1 other artifact. This allows you to be able to tap for any mana colors you want before you sacrifice it to Grinding Station. Every time that artifact comes back out in play, that triggers Grinding Station to then untap to then be able to retap and keep that loop going. Something else that works really well with Underworld Breach if you're doing the Thassa's Oracle line is you can do Tainted Pact to be able to exile cards from your library until you find that Thassa's Oracle. Hey, there it is. Those cards go into exile, Thassa's Oracle goes into your hand, Tainted Pact goes to the graveyard, crack the Lion's Eye Diamond for 3 blue. You then put Lion's Eye Diamond, escaping some 3 random cards you don't care about into exile, crack that for 3 black, exile 3 more cards you don't care about to exile, cast for the 2 of the 3 blue Thassa's Oracle, hold priority, and then exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard, use 2 of the 3 black to cast Tainted Pact. And with that, you did the entire Thassa's Oracle win line with only just a Tainted Pact, Underworld Breach, and either enough mana to do this line straight up, or a Lion's Eye Diamond to work with. Of course, again, you need enough cards in your graveyard to be able to exile to keep doing this line. One more thing worth mentioning that you really need to look out for if you're doing the Underworld Breach win line, or at least a value line to get to your other win line, or perhaps something you can think of if you're trying to stop an Underworld Breach win line, is if they do the Lion's Eye Diamond thing, they crack their entire hand and put it all in the graveyard. They do the Brain Freeze thing where they keep looping all of this until they have their entire library in the graveyard. They'll get to the point where Thassa's Oracle or something else is trying to be cast, and then the response could be Endurance. In the case of Thassa's Oracle being cast here, casting Tainted Pact or Demonic Consultation response doesn't make any sense because you have no library. These can resolve to the point where they just go back in your graveyard anyway, and then Endurance resolves on the stack, putting your entire graveyard into the library. At that point, you have no access to those cards. You've been doing Lion's Eye Diamond loops or whatever else. You probably are hellbent with no cards in hand as the Endurance resolves, and all you just have is the Thassa's Oracle to resolve on the stack. There are other really key moments that Endurance can be used to stop the Underworld Breach, but that's just one of the prime examples to share. In many cases, you can expect to see a player running Underworld Breach if they're running blue and red in their color identity, or if they're going with a no blue deck with red. A lot of times in mono red decks, you won't really see it, but in red plus black, red plus white, or red plus white plus black, that would be Rakdos, Boros, or Mardu, respectively, very high chance that you'll be seeing an Underworld Breach line in that deck. Almost every deck that has red and blue in the identity will be running the Underworld Breach line. There are some exceptions, but they're fairly rare in comparison to the overall meta. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment as well. Let me know what you think about this video series. What other topics would you like to be seen and covered in future videos? And as always, thank you for watching. I appreciate you.